Strong indications that an attack near a military barracks in southeast London was a terrorist incident. A man believed to be a British soldier was hacked to death by two attackers who were later shot and wounded by police.
We must fight them as they fight us. An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. You people will never be safe.
This British man has to pay the price for your promise, Cameron.
By the time they'd stopped, at least 12 people were dead.
129 people were killed in Friday night's terror attacks in Paris. Authorities say 3 teams of attackers launched gun and bomb attacks at several locations in the French capital.
C'est un acte de guerre qui a été commis par une armée terroriste.
Nous ne pouvons pas perdre cette guerre, parce que c'est au fond une guerre de civilisation.
Islam is incompatible with all Western civilization.
The war has started. People just need to wake up and pick a side.
They feel they are better. They feel they are more civilized than.
The xenophobic tidal wave that's sweeping across Europe currently.
In Saddam's Iraq, they will put you in front of a wall and shoot you. In Denmark, they strangle you slowly.
Now I think it's reached a stage where it's a bit intolerable. Every single part of our community is under scrutiny.
As a rabbi, as a Jew, as a human being, I'm shocked. I have never seen it as open, as virulent, as hateful as it is right now.
Anybody who isn't a Muslim has never been to a mosque. They're not places that other people would go to.
The imams, their elder, are really the problem.
Are we seeing a clash of civilizations? Many are saying Islam and European identity are incompatible and that Islam has contributed nothing to Western civilization. Others disagree.
Der Islam gehört zu Deutschland.
I mean, Muslims are part of Europe. Always through all histories.
As a Muslim scholar living in the West, I set out to seek the answers with my trusty team.
When you realize you've not really got close to your neighbors, you can either panic or you sit with them and listen.
Our journey is in 3 phases. We first explore the past in Andalusia and Sicily when different religions could live together. The next phase is of Ottoman expansion into Europe and resistance to it. And the final phase, closer to our times, is of European colonization and immigration. The first phase of our journey takes us to Andalusia and Sicily. Andalusia 1,000 years ago produced great inventors, scholars, and architecture. The capital, Cordoba, was the richest and most populous city of Europe, and its main library had 400,000 manuscripts. Jews, Christians, and Muslims lived, worked, created, and prospered together. Though relations did not always live up to the ideal. The great poet Akbar prayed in the Grand Mosque at Cordoba and wrote a famous poem about it. I prayed on the same spot 2 decades ago. Iqbal's poem hangs in the mayor's office.
La primera cosa que a mí me gustaría decirle al mundo musulmán es gracias, porque parte de lo que hay en Córdoba se lo debemos a su cultura, se lo debemos a su carácter, se lo debemos a su esfuerzo y esa huella está viva y se percibe en la ciudad de Córdoba, porque esta es su casa también y que nosotros no lo percibimos como una amenaza, sino que estamos encantados de recibirlos y de que se sientan cómodos en esta ciudad.
My granddaughter Anna had practiced a curtsy bow for the mayor.
Cordoba 1,000 years ago was one of the 3 more important towns in the Arab world. But at that time there were Islamic population. The kingdom of the Caliphate was of course a Muslim kingdom, but there were also Christian populations and Hebrew population.
There are descriptions of Andalusia as a paradise. Religion was lived here in a very spiritual way, beyond dogmas and in a very simple and harmonious way.
En el siglo X, Córdoba era la gran ciudad del mundo. Teníamos a Averroes, a Maimónides, a los mejores poetas, los mejores escritores, los mejores músicos, filósofos, médicos, gracias a una visión amplia, no reducida.
It was a place where everybody was welcome, where everybody could put their own part.
There were many overlapping elements of all three cultures.
Those people were able, even though they were different, they were able to cooperate and work together. And this is what convivencia is about.
It was a very peaceful century, the 10th century, so they could make a lot of progresses accordingly, and they made a lot of progresses in all the sciences. Culture was very important, education for everybody, for men and women.
When the whole of Europe and the West were in sort of a dark history or dark ages, it was Islam was being a contributor to the humanity of the West. They were the one who translated from 9th, 10th century onward all the Greek and Roman books. And through that translation, mathematics came to the West. Through that translation, we were aware of medicine. Through that translation, we were blessed to understand a lot of things about food, about health.
I'd say the whole of medieval Jewish philosophy could not have come into existence without Islamic philosophy. The rules of literature and grammar are basically taken from Muslim grammarians.
Moses Maimonides, the greatest rabbi of the Middle Ages, not only his philosophy, but almost every aspect of his work was influenced by and stimulated by Islam. His creation of this magnificent legal code was inspired by Sharia codes. His formulation of the principles of Jewish faith was inspired by the fact that Muslim thinkers had done this wonderful presentation of Islamic faith. So it spread from Islam to Judaism. It then spread to Christianity through Maimonides and influenced a figure like Aquinas. So you have Islam leading Europe out of the Dark Ages.
In north of Europe, in north of Spain, in France, at that time they questioned if women had a soul. A philosopher as Ibn Rushd, Averroes, he said that women could make the same job as men, a bit very in advance for his time. And he founded, Averroes, Ibn Rushd, many schools for women. Maybe at that time I would have liked to be a concubine, because you could go to school. There were schools for women, which was a privilege. So you would know how to read, you would maybe study medicine. There were women who were doctors, poets, musicians, dancers. They were very good poets at that time, Wallada and so on. They had a privileged life, because imagine you didn't have a husband at home all the time. They were very emancipated, liberated women, maybe like Virginia Woolf, but at the end of the 10th century.
It was here in 1492 at the Alhambra Palace in Granada that the story of Islam finally came to an end, centuries after Muslims landed on the Iberian Peninsula in 711. Over the next few centuries, Spain did everything possible to erase the memory of the Muslims. Yet, here we are, centuries later, with Islam in evidence everywhere. Halal shops, women in hijab, mosques, and of course, the most popular tourist site of all of Spain, the Alhambra itself. But most important of all, that period of Muslim Spain left behind an idea of something called la convivencia, a Spanish term, in which people could coexist, live together, create together, and prosper together, Jews, Christians, and Muslims. And it is this idea of la convivencia that is so desperately needed in the 21st century. and we are exploring la convivencia in Europe today.
Precisamente ese modelo del que hablamos, del Al-Ándalus, de una forma natural, ha trascendido a Melilla y se ha ido desarrollando a lo largo de los siglos, a lo largo de estos tiempos, de una manera ejemplar. Claro que sí, siempre con sus conflictos y siempre con sus dificultades, pero lo grande y lo importante es que esos conflictos y esas dificultades se han ido superando sin grandes problemas. La ciudadanía de Melilla se ha dado a sí mismo una convivencia modélica, dando cuenta que solamente había un camino, que no nos podíamos dar la espalda los unos a los otros y que esa convivencia en común y en conjunto es la más deseosa y la mejor para todos, ¿no?
So, Assalamu alaikum, sisters. It's so nice to be here in your beautiful mosque in Granada and with Alhambra Palace behind us.
It has a real pull. It has a pull because, you know, we're Muslims. We have, for us, this is like a heritage that we can't, I don't think we can create nowadays. It's fantastic, you know, it's beautiful. It's like the kind of the height of the Muslim reign here in Europe.
I want to ask one question about the hijab.
You have to bring it up. It's just like the token question.
Yeah, we have to bring it up.
That's all right, I'll forgive you.
So, what are your comments?
I started wearing a scarf when I was 18, 19, and I really felt it, and I felt empowered and strong, and I came to Spain and it all fell apart. It really did. I had some terrible comments with my older generation, Spanish older generation in Córdoba.
At the beginning of living here in Granada, the people of the city, they were very unconfident, you know.
A huge fear factor has been created here, and it's still there. You know, my brother grew up in Spain, and the history book started at 1492, the fall of Granada.
Many years, many people tell me that I speak very well Spanish, and when I try to say, yes, I am Spanish, I am from Valladolid, the place where they speak the best Spanish. The people don't understand, no?
If we wore a scarf, they wouldn't rent houses. There used to be, I have had rocks thrown at me. There were writings on the wall. There's a very despictive word which is called mordo in Spanish, saying like mortos go home. They couldn't stand it. They were terrified. They thought we were going to take over the Albaicin. They thought we were going to take over Granada. After the 11th of September in America, then we had bombings in Madrid. And always when something like that happens, everything gets really difficult, we get looked upon badly, we get, you know, and so then, you know, it's like back to square one, and so you have to start again. And so I think it's important, really important, that we do service to the community and that we offer this service of dawah. So which was once a mosque that they were completely and absolutely against, the people of the Albaicin. They had, how do you say, the papers that everybody signed against the mosque. We've now become very okay and very well looked upon in that area, which is wonderful.
Please tell us the 2 or 3 ways where you can build bridges.
I think being out in the world is really, really important. I do demonstrations here in the shop. I've also got the workshop upstairs. So first it all gets cut. When people come upstairs and they see us all, I've got 2 young women working with us. My son works in the workshop. He is, inshallah, taking over. And then people see us and they ask what it is that we have. And that's where the conversation begins.
What's happening here was this beautiful thing that even when you listen to Sephardi music, that is the Jewish music, okay, happening, is based in the same musical system as the Arabic or Islamic music, which is called the maqam. Okay, so they were even following the same musical system, which is one of the richest ones. We have Mustafa here with an oud, which is actually the mother of the guitar. The guitar came from the oud. this maqam that he's playing is called Hijaz. Okay, this is what here we call the flamenco mode, the flamenco sound, which comes from them. And in Spain, it's not only the music, it's part of the culture itself. I mean, even nowadays, more than one Spanish person doesn't realize how deep it's in their blood, in their customs, in their habits. There are simple things like the famous ole in flamenco that we always cry out, that comes from the Allah. That when you're playing Arabic music and you're doing something really beautiful, people is like, oh, Allah, Allah. You cannot separate the customs of the people and the music, because music is just an expression of what's happening, what you live and how you live.
What is often forgotten is that Muslims once ruled Sicily and created a rich pluralist culture. This great cathedral is built on the site of what once was the central mosque of Sicily. The legendary Christian rulers Roger II and Frederick II, the Holy Roman Emperor, are buried here. Even after they lost power, Muslim influence remained. Both Roger and Frederick spoke Arabic, had Muslim bodyguards, and had Arabic inscriptions on their royal mantle. So we see in Sicily the convivencia of Andalusia in reverse. That is, Christian rulers highly appreciative of their Muslim subjects.
Frederick II was really intelligent. Islamic culture was civilization. And they decided not to destroy, but to use.
Don't ask me the name of God. So when I come inside a mosque, I pray Allah. When I come inside a synagogue, I pray Yahweh. And this moment I'm Christian.
Daniel, we're here in your wonderful shop. I've been here many times walking along the streets of Sicily,
Thanks.
Palermo, and I discovered this little gem of knowledge. And I'm very delighted that you shared some of your knowledge with me. Please tell us about the Palatine Chapel, where we have this Muslim, Arab synthesis with the local culture.
This is ceiling of Palatine Chapel.
This is the ceiling
Yes.
of the Palatine Chapel.
This a text in
Kufic Arabic.
Yes. This text for poetic prose for Roger II.
And I can just barely see here Bismillah, in the name of God. It's not Arabic. No. It's not Christian.
No.
It's Sicilian culture.
Sicilian culture. This is a description of first watch of Roger II. It's in three languages. Latin language, Greek language, and Arab's language.
Wow.
This for me the symbol of Sicilian culture. This is the symbol is this because in this church all represents all culture in this island.
The Latin Roman elements you see in the shape of the church, the cross.
The shape of the church is straight-type cross.
Yes.
And what is the Arabic or Muslim influence?
These arabescos, the decorations, and the shape of those arches.
You can see here better the Arab arches, las figuras geométricas, the geometrical figures, which are Arab also.
Palermo is not an European town. We are a Middle East town in Europe.
This district is called Il Cassaro, which comes from the Arabic word al-kas.
So do you have couscous in Sicily?
Sure, we do. Same kind of sweets. Like as Middle East sweets, like the one that very sugary or with almonds, for example.
But the sweets and the couscous are also considered Sicilian.
Yeah, sure, they are. We're less racist in general because we're quite used to live with with people from different cultures, and we all meet in this market.
You can understand here the real soul of Sicily. It will survive despite of the nationalism that have grown up in the last period of crisis.
I started to learn some Arabic, and I discovered that many Sicilian words have Arabic roots. Like we say mischino, which is an entirely Sicilian word. It has nothing to do with Italian, which comes from the Arabic miskin, which means poor. And in Sicilian, mischino is something you say to someone. Like, it's an adjective you use to say when someone is, poor him, poor thing.
The West are not ignorant, but oblivious sometimes to this great heritage. As a student, I used to go to dinners, okay? Walk in, look at the curtain, and say to them, you know, this is Islamic design. They look at me and said, what do you mean it's Islamic design? I said, this is Islamic design. Go and look for such a book and realize that the design comes from there.
Europe learned everything from Muslims. It was Muslims, who brought the civilization to Europe. Gave the civilization, should we say, to Europe. Now it's the other way around. Now people from come to Europe, Muslim countries, come to Europe to learn the same knowledge which they had taught the Europeans. So, full circle.
The question of the three religions is very simple. There is only one creator, one God, three names, and we are all his creation. Simple. Simple. The message is simple. Every one of us are his creation. There are not three gods. There are only one God.
And really nowadays there is a lot of misunderstanding, because really if one person really understands the Quran or understands the Bible or the Bhagavad Gita in India or the Dharma in the Buddhism, you get to a point which is all of them are talking about the same thing. But we don't, it's like looking at the same thing from different points of view. And this guy is fighting with this guy because he thinks that he's looking at another thing, and they are talking about the same thing, but they just don't realize, yeah? So Cordoba for that was a great thing, because it was a moment where we connected several people that was looking at the same thing, and they were completing the picture. They were not fighting about it.
Who are the most inspiring people in your life?
The three prophets and my parents.
Any five, whichever inspired.
That's the three prophets and my parents.
And your parents.
That's correct, that's five.
Now which three prophets?
Moses, Jesus, and Prophet Muhammad, and my parents. Simple.
That's a great list, great list.
When you talk about good relations between faiths, at moments of high intensity conflict, people think you're being utopian. People just aren't that good. So what brings these aspirations from utopia to reality is the knowledge that we have been there before. Andalusia showed how it could be done and showed that it could be done. And because of that, for me, Andalusia is the single most important feature of our current situation.
We've produced some of the great innovations since the Enlightenment. We've also produced most of the really horrible genocide and Holocaust. We were the ones who built Auschwitz. There's that dark side of Europe. Generally speaking, in the history of what's been one of the world's least tolerant continents, certainly compared to Asia and Africa, in Europe, the places where there's been a certain amount of what the Spanish call convivencia, sort of living together, they've tended often to be Muslim places. So Muslim Sicily, Muslim Spain, and to some extent the Balkans under Ottoman rule, the Crimea, with its huge sort of Jewish population, and the Bulgar republics further east in European Russia. It's, I think, not a coincidence that the points of light in the Dark Continent historically have tended to be Muslim points of light.
We are now in the Balkans to explore the second phase of Islam in Europe, one dominated by the Ottomans, whose mark is clearly visible long after their departure.
So this bridge is the symbol of Mostar.
Yes, it is symbol of Mostar. It is so
famous symbols that we will find it on the tourist guides and different things. It's a symbol of Bosnia and Herzegovina.
And it's full of people, full of tourists.
Yes, and probably there is also the guy which is willing to jump if they collect him 50 euros.
He'll jump out.
Yes.
That is a mosque. Old mosque.
The roof that is down.
Downstairs.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a minaret because this bridge is as high as a minaret would be, and therefore this acts as the minaret.
It began with a statement by someone who said that Islam is not European.
Yes. Neither European nor part of European civilization.
Yeah. But here I am. My DNA, if like, although I don't care about that, goes back at least 2,000 years BC. The existence of a Illyric tribe, and there are a lot of Illyric DNA here, and those are, by recognition of all people of science, the oldest European, that is the oldest European stock. So what are they talking about? Who is that person to say, you are not of this? Does he own? There is a monopoly of what is culture, what religion.
All traditional religions in Europe today, they came from the Middle East. Christianity, Judaism, Islam also has a right to Europe, because in the same time Islam here is a domestic religion as well as Christianity and Judaism.
The history of Balkan and Europe cannot be separated. Balkan was always a boiling spot, if you like. But my point is this, that Balkan remained the most dense in its multicultural, multilingual and multinational setting than any other region in Europe.
We visited the medieval monastery at Voinica to see the famed Ahdnama, or document of protection, issued on the orders of the Ottoman Sultan.
And what does the Ahdnama say?
Sultan gives Ahdnama,
u kojem daje slobodu,
where he
djelovanju,
gives freedom in
u
activities,
ispovjedanju,
in practicing religion. He took this part of his wardrobe from him, Sultan, and says, now you are under my cover, and gave him.
što je značilo da mu daje za pravo da je to tako kako je rekao.
Which means symbolically that he will protect him. And
so this belonged to the Sultan. Mehmet.
Exactly. Symbolics of that is that Christianity and Islam to understand each other.
Islam, Christians.
And what connects them?
Possible.
To bring together.
Yes.
Generally speaking, we don't have any special problems because we are Jews. This country is almost free of anti-Semitism. We are very proud of this, and I'm always trying to explain that this is because in the last 450 years we became very well incorporated into the Bosnian society.
This community actually came from Spain?
From Spain. We came, as you can see on my card, in 1565. It's a year when we established the community. Language, customs, culture, songs, everything is preserved. I'm one of the youngest member in the community who still can speak Ladino.
You can speak Ladino?
Sí, como no.
So Ladino, how do you define Ladino? It's a combination
Ladino is Old Spanish. It's combination on Catalan and Castilian. It's combination with some Portuguese words and with some addition of the local language. Because the language from Spain it's 450, 500 years old.
Yet many non-Muslims expressed their hatred of the Turks through art and literature. They are even depicted as siding with Dracula against the invading Turks in the recent film Dracula Untold.
The Turks threaten to destroy my kingdom. Never forget who I am.
The hatred of Islam and Turks, according to some Serbian historians, had defining feature in creating Serbian national identity, and still it has. When Ratko Mladic, the Serb general, who is now being tried in the ITCY in The Hague, when he entered Srebrenica, he said, "This is the revenge against Turks."
I am in Srebrenica in Bosnia. One of the worst genocides in the late 20th century took place here. Several thousand Muslim men, many of them mere boys, were slaughtered with the United Nations looking on. This was just half a century after Europe said, never again. This region, the Balkans, was on the front lines of the confrontation between Christian Europe and the Muslim Ottoman Empire. For centuries, there was clash and conflict, but also there were times of peace and harmony between Jews, Christians, and Muslims. The confrontation created an idea in the minds of Europeans that Islam was predatory, alien, and uncivilized. That idea is the basis for the Islamophobia in Europe today.
All of them were killed, the entire family of mine. My husband, my elderly son, Azmir, my youngest son, Almir. My two brothers were killed as well. Two sons of my brother. Over 50 of my siblings. All of them were killed in Srebrenica genocide.
We had 37,000 people living here before war. Now we have around 8,000 people living here. We had 11,000 pupils in schools, students, and now we have 1,100, which is a huge demographic collapse.
It was not done by one or two men, not in 1 or 2 days. They had a strategy, they had a plan, and they kept working to ethnically cleanse one nation, and it was planned in advance. I fled from Srebrenica with my twin brother and my father. Along with more than 10,000 of men and boys, we started to move, to walk in a column, one by one, marching from Srebrenica through the woods to Tuzla. We were literally afraid to come down here to Dutch base because we knew that Dutch battalion would hand us over to Serb army. As we kept walking, when they opened fire to this column, I lost sight of my twin brother and my father, and I had never seen them in my life.
I lost my brother. He was 5 years younger than me, and in this time I think my life also ended, and I don't like to live. I don't like to live.
Genocide is something that you see, kill 10,000 people, hide their bodies, you just hide them in the woods, in mass graves. And then after a year, you dig them out and you hide them in second and tertial and all 10 different places. So it's a system. You need politics, civil engineering, machineries and all, transports, and then you need police, you need army, it's a whole system. So this is why I say, it's not popular in this country. You have to pretend that we are all living happily, multi-ethnic tolerancy and all this.
There was our friends who killed us, from another religion.
Your own friends?
The own friends.
Like your neighbors?
Like the neighbors, like you work with these people. It was very hard time. But now it's something different, I have also 2 sons.
This is the shame of the whole world.
Oni koji su mogli
Those
spriječiti
who could
samu
have
agresiju na
prevented
Bosnu i
aggression
Hercegovinu,
against Bosnia and Herzegovina,
a u stvari su oborili glavu
they
pred
just
što se dešavalo.
failed
Pa i-
to
pa i
anything.
genocid.
Europe, they're afraid of European Muslims. François Mitterrand, some of his decisions were explicitly talking about Muslims in the middle of Europe. And if you read some of their reports, they're pointing out the danger of having a Muslim state in the middle of Europe. If we were Croats or Catholics, that things would go different. And I think we're still a problem because we're Muslims.
Those
Oni
who
su,
are being acquitted from this
oni
crime,
su učitelji
They are
mladim
teachers
generacijama,
to youths.
u stvari oni su otrov za buduće
they are poison
generacije.
for next generations.
Oni djeci govore
They
kako
tell
su
children
oni heroji,
that they are
jer,
heroes,
kako su oni dobili bitku,
that they,
kako su
that they
poubijali
have
Turke,
won
oni
a
kažu
battle,
da su ovo
that
Turci
they took a
bili.
revenge against Turks.
Oni svojoj djeci to
They tell
govore,
their children this.
a ne kažu da je to
They
bio
don't tell them
goloruk
that-
narod, da narod nije imao
That
pravo da se
those guys
brani.
were unarmed civilians. We are here at the memorial.
Ovo je naše sveto
This is
mjesto,
our pilgrimage,
ovo je naše hodočašće,
a saint place.
ovo je naša druga Meka.
This is another Mecca for us.
Please tell Sister Khadija
Samo da ti kažem nešto, kao sestri,
that she is not alone,
da nisi sama,
that all over the world,
da širom svijeta,
not only Muslims,
ne samo muslimani,
but every faith, people from
svi
Christianity,
ljudi koji
people
iskreno
from
vjeruju u
other
Boga,
faiths, know what happened,
znaju šta je se
have
desilo
full
ovdje.
sympathy,
Imamo
compassion
I heard about your book, Living Islam, in 1994. English version of the book was given to me by Haris Silajdzic, and he said to me, we have to translate the book into Bosnian. And really I found during those terrible times, terrible days in Sarajevo. Sarajevo was a besieged city. We lived under siege. We found one lady, university professor Zulejha Rijanović. She is a professor of English language and literature. And we offered the book to her. And she translated it in almost 6 months.
Professor Zulekha, what a pleasure meeting you.
It is. It is a pleasure for me to see you all.
You have been a major figure in my life because during those terrible days of the siege of Sarajevo, you translated my book, Living Islam.
She translated the book by hand. I was bringing the paper.
I like to write. I like to
That's
write
the way,
things when I translate.
That's the way her mom used to translate all her books before. Sarajevo was completely under siege. There was no electricity for months. There was no heating. Of course, the gas supply was cut off. The rooms were exposed. I was sleeping in the corridor and in the kitchen. I would come and she would be sitting in the kitchen, fully dressed, in a jacket and with woolen gloves, and she's writing and she's telling me, listen, maybe this does not sound well. How do you feel? And then she would start reading and I'm like, huh? 93 was really, really tough. Up to 3,000 shells a day. So you never knew whether you just live like that and you just go and do your work. And every morning when you say goodbye, that can be the last day you see each other. And then it can also be that when you come back from the office, your apartment is shelled and the translation is burned or lost. It was also dangerous because then it was the only copy. She used to carry the papers that she finished. She would carry with herself to the office and back every day to protect the book. It was really given as a present to our soldiers, generals, all the foreign guests. They were all the people who meant something.
Interest for the book was tremendous. Everybody, and it just disappeared because it was delivered all over the place, and it was helped people to feel better, and we're very proud of everything.
Living and Živi Islam, it's translated in Bosnian. We are honored to have you.
Jako smo zahvalni za vašu knjigu koju smo preveli na bosanski
We
jezik.
are very thankful for the book that we translated.
To je knjiga koja nas je inspirirala, nas ulemu, moram to kazati, inspirirala je
Your book was inspiration to our ulema here.
Here's how La Benevolencia operated during the war. Surgeon tended patients in the community center, and he made house calls.
Through our humanitarian organization with the name La Benevolencia, which means goodwill on the Old Spanish, we help everyone on strictly non-sectarian basis, providing food, shelter, and the medicines for the citizens of Sarajevo. And according to our Ministry of Health, Benevolencia provides almost 40% of all the medical need for the citizens of Sarajevo.
You have to talk with others. You have to have neighbors, you know, your friends. I say to you, they killed us also, but even if they do that for the goodness, you know, we have to be together.
To be a Muslim here doesn't mean that we should eradicate our European identity. No, not at all. We, in the same time, we are Europeans, but we are Europeans in our own way.
We are a part of the Ottoman Empire left here. We have been living here for centuries, for more than 500 years. So that's why I consider our community here as indigenous peoples. And Islam in Greece has to be divided in two. The northern part, we, the indigenous peoples, we've been living here for centuries and as Muslims, and the new community, the new Muslim community in Athens, who are immigrants.
The Greek Muslims are today 102,000 people, located mainly in the region of Thrace, where they do have 111 mosques and smaller masjidia. And they also have a lot of facilities as they are Greek citizens.
There are some political parties who try to, racist political parties who threat us, who openly say we don't want other people in Greece, just Greeks. We don't want immigrants. We're not immigrants actually here in the Western Thrace people. We've been here for I don't know how many years long. We can't trace it, you know, the history. It's too long. So we're not immigrants and they still don't want us because we're Muslims. Last year, before the elections, I heard two of my local people here in Santi were attacked by that group of people with the black t-shirts, you know, at night. So we were all afraid to go out at night. And they sometimes attack the mosques, our mosques. They break windows, they leave pig heads in the mosques.
They leave pig heads?
Yes, pig heads, yes. That's very awful, you know, very... Isn't it frightening? I mean, in your own country, you feel like you are not wanted. I want my kid to live in Greece. I love Greece. I don't want my kids to go away. So I want a good life for them. I want good jobs for them.
The Greek government has given the authority to the Mufti to implement his own religious laws for the community. And I think this is one of the few examples in Europe.
Only for religious matters.
Only religious matters.
Yes.
So what are the matters that he can adjudicate under the Sharia?
Είναι η γάμη.
Marriages.
Διαζύγια.
Divorces.
Χωρίζομαι τα κινητά τους ρήτρες.
Alimonies and...
Πες το πώς το...
And the inheritance problem.
Φέτφα.
che o preferirà chi sta na γνωρίζει πες το.
The decision of the Mufti is recognized by the Greek state.
Islam is one of the main and important religions of Europe. Islam will stay there, will remain there, and it's not a threat.
We now enter our third phase of Islam in Europe. It starts with European colonization and ends with immigration. France and Great Britain had the largest empires.
I am at the ancient port city of Marseille, which gives its name to the French national anthem, La Marseillaise. The city reflects the glory days of the French Empire, its art, architecture, literature, and above all, its way of life, what the French called La Gloire de la France. France was a genuine imperial heavyweight in the same category as Great Britain. After the Second World War, when the empire unraveled, over 1 million immigrants arrived here from Algeria, just across the waters of the Mediterranean. Here, Africa met Europe, Islam met Christianity in an uneasy encounter. Even today, over 30% of the population of the city is comprised of Muslim immigrants. In spite of the large numbers, there is no central mosque. Debates about identity, integration, and assimilation are fiercely held here. The outcome of these debates will determine the future of the Muslims of France.
If you pay a visit, you should expect a return visit. So the Europeans went to the subcontinent, North Africa and so on. So these guys are now paying a return visit to them. And some of them don't seem to like it. They don't even ask for their artifacts to be given back to them, taken by the Europeans, as you know. So they are coming in peace, they want to work, they did not come to take anything. They want to live, and this is their right. This is their right. You cannot go to the subcontinent, take what you want, come back, and say we have nothing to do with this. That's not how it works. That's not life. And I'm talking about this wave of far right. Some are saying, oh, these are foreigners and so on. Who are you? Who are you?
Donc ils ont voulu vraiment enlever la personne, l'identité algérienne, musulmane arabe pour faire ça.
When France conquered Algeria, they really wanted to extract the identity, the Muslim identity, to put the Christian identity into the Algerian population.
France, for instance, is very much an assimilationist country. There, you assimilate and behave like the French, so you're okay. But if you integrate and assimilate, or if you want to continue to do your thing, wear the hijab to school or wear the skull cap to school and so on and so forth, then you are seen as separate and non-assimilable. And I think it's part of the problem.
The situation for Muslim people, if I talk about Muslim people, is getting worse. That's sad, but I think it's getting worse. Because people are more and more angry, and it's like if they're keeping all this anger and then it will come out.
Whatever I will say, they won't look at me as a French woman talking, but the first thing, whatever I am meeting a minister or a media, they will look at me only because I'm either Muslim or from Northern African roots. The narrative of the far right wing of Marine Le Pen has been very successful, but not only in the extremist movement, but in the Socialist Party and the traditional right party, who are using the same narrative of Marine Le Pen and using the words French de souche, which means originally French, and French from immigrant background or Northern African roots. And they have won.
Movements that are gaining in popularity across the continent, whether you're looking at France, Greece, the Netherlands, moving into Eastern Europe. I think we should all be very concerned. That point of view seems to be gaining strength, not being combated effectively. The whole notion of a European project, we are very far away from the rationale that was used to bring it about. When Jean Monnet had that vision, he was coming out of an extraordinarily bloody conflict that, like, thankfully we've never seen since and hopefully never will. But the idea was to move beyond that. Well, for a young generation in Europe today, I mean, that is ancient history.
Will be the central mosque of Marseille.
Yes, but this was going to cost you?
Yes, 22 million.
22 million euros.
Yes.
The community doesn't have that money because they'll have to raise the money.
See, they have, but
unless
they are not organized enough to yes. This is the building.
Oh, this is it here. This is the building. So the plan is to destroy it and build a new structure.
The definite plan.
Why do you think this mosque is important to be built for Marseille?
Because it's the symbol of the Muslim Islam presence here. You know, we have about 300,000 Muslims, but there is no building for the ceremony or symbol of their presence in the town. Jews has big synagogue. Armenian has a cathedral. Catholics have cathedral, and so on. The Muslims have nothing.
So if the mosque is built, it is a symbol
that the Muslims, the Islam and the Muslims are accepted here in Marseille.
If you have an outsider view, you will think, okay, that's unfair that they don't have what we call cathedral mosque, meaning big mosque. In the case of Marseille, it appears that the local power was not particularly pushy to see such a cathedral mosque appearing, but also among the Muslim community, there was a big divide and a big competition. The Muslim community is also, in France, is also nationally based, which means that Moroccans want to have their own mosque, Algerians the same, the Tunisian, the Turkish want to have their own mosque. So the constraints limiting the emergence of such huge mosque also come from the Muslim community.
The police have confirmed that Mohamed Merah is dead. A video that was shot by a friend, he appears to be a very happy 24-year-old, but he had a long string of delinquent crimes and appears that he was quietly being radicalized. He did manage to kill 7 people in the space of just over 10 days.
Mohamed Merah, Kouachi, Koulibaly, they are Muslim. Whether we like it or not, they are part of us. And I'm always saying that I wrote years ago when the attacks in Toulouse happened, that I was puzzled to see this Muhammad, who's the name of the Prophet, alayhi salam, peace be upon him. This Muhammad, who's the name of my father, the name of my nephew, this guy who could be one of my brother killing. And I was always wondering, why did we reach this? How come? What happened to France? What happened to us, to Muslim in Western countries, to have among our brothers people doing this? If you look at the lives of the brothers Kouachi, Mohamed Merah and Koulibaly, the guy who went to the supermarket, who made this attack against the Jewish grocery, in a different way they have similar path. Dislocated family, being in the very beginning drug dealers, going to jails and being radicalized in jails. And also they failed, France failed, you can say it. We failed to integrate and to make those people feeling happy in their own country. When I think about those guys and about all those people, I really think that it's like young kids being abandoned by their mother, which is France, and getting very frustrated and finding this ideology that can give them a reason to go to Daesh or to destroy the mother that didn't fully love them. France, in the French history, we don't teach about the history of the colonization. We don't teach about Muslim figures, Muslim Abdelkrim or personalities, characters in the history of Islam. And some of the kids had the feeling that they have no place in our history books. And they need a way in another include those people and having an inclusive narrative about what it is to be French and what is the French history about.
Of all population growth in Europe since 1990, 90% has been Islamic immigration. In just 39 years, France will be an Islamic republic.
I don't believe, to tell you the truth, in this concept of Eurabia. The people who invented that concept, Europe will collapse under the weight of Muslims. Islam can provide many things to Europe, but also Europe can provide many positive things to Islam. France is not only suffering from migration and terrorism, but we're also producing a new form of Islam connected to Western moderation and innovation, a sort of French ijtihad. I really think that. I really think in that way we are a sort of new Andalusia.
You see the consequences of the colonization. For example, Algeria and Tunisia were under the protectorate or the colonization of France. Today they are still struggling, but you have Pakistan and India who are under British sovereignty, who have today the nuclear bomb, and they are more and more advanced.
Pas comparaison entre le Commonwealth et la francophonie.
There is no comparison between Commonwealth and the Francophonie.
So we were very fortunate, alhamdulillah, to be colonized by the British.
Il est en train de dire, on a eu beaucoup de chance d'être colonisé par les...
Franchement, on aurait aimé.